Good morning, everyone. I'm John Berman.
I'm Poppy Harlow, 10 a.m. Eastern. So glad you're with us. We begin this hour with breaking news. Just moments ago, CNN learned that the White House is considering an outside review of all U.S. intelligence agencies. This is the latest development in the often tense relationship between the president and the intel communities that report to him.
Yeah, the tense right now relationship between these two forces. U.S. officials say the man that the White House is considering is a Trump ally, billionaire Steven Feinberg. His job, among other things, we are told, would be to assess the very value of the various agencies and their ability to share information. I want to bring in Joe Johns to explain to us what we are learning. Joe's at the White House. What are you hearing?
Well, Steven Feinberg is a billionaire, as you said. He is a founder of an investment firm up in New York. He's an ally of Donald Trump, and now there are suggestions that he might be picked to lead a review of the intelligence agencies. Now, this was first reported by the New York Times, confirmed by our Jim Sciutto here at CNN. We do know that some things would have to be worked out, namely the fact that the Office of the Director of National Intelligence has complete purview over many of these issues, and the question is how a Feinberg review would fit into that. Here at the White House, we did ask a White House spokesman just a little while ago to confirm that Feinberg would be leading a review. We were told that a review would be occurring and it would be looking into the leaks, but we were not given a sense that the Feinberg name is finalized to look into this. So apparently a work in progress, but Feinberg's name is definitely in the mix.
Joe Johns reporting the breaking news of the White House. Thank you, Joe. Let us bring in our panel. Karen Tumulty, the national political correspondent for the Washington Post, is with us. Doug Heye, CNN political commentator and former communications director for the RNC, and Paul Begala, CNN political commentator. Nice to have you all here. And Karen, let me begin with you. Look, the president has the right to do what he wants. If he wants to appoint this person, someone he knows well, a confidant, etc., he can do that. It complicates things that it would essentially make the purpose of the Office of the Director of National Intelligence moot or unnecessary. But this is a guy who runs Cerberus Capital, a big finance guy, a billionaire, has no intel experience. Does it make sense?
And also, he is somebody who specializes in coming in and to distressed companies and pulling them apart. I think that if there's going to be a review of intelligence, don't forget that the country spent several years doing that in the wake of 9/11. And the pressing concern at that point was that information was not flowing smoothly enough, was not being coordinated well enough. I think that, you know, there's the potential for a real chilling effect of anything that sort of makes people more cautious in these intelligence agencies when it comes to, you know, sharing information. Now, these leaks, President Trump keeps saying that, you know, they're illegal, and they are. But the fact is that usually when you see a situation like this of people doing a lot of leaking, it's because they are frustrated that information that they believe is very important is not getting out.
You know, we should note here the announcement or that he's considering Steven Feinberg to head up this intelligence review. It's not happening in a vacuum, as Karen is saying right now. It's happening amidst this assault from the White House on the media, but also the intelligence agencies for what he calls illegal leaks. Let me just read you the most recent musings from President Trump. Just about 24 minutes ago, he wrote that Democrats had to come up with a story as to why they lost the election and so badly, so they made up a story, Russia, fake news. You know, Doug Heye, what he's talking about is the CNN reporting and reporting elsewhere that there were contacts, constant contacts between Trump campaign advisors and Russian officials during the campaign. He hasn't addressed the substance of this report, just going after the leakers and now apparently calling for an entire review of the entire intelligence agency.
Yeah, and obviously he wasn't asked about it at the press conference yesterday with the two reporters who asked questions. Look, I think it's important to step back, always challenge your assumptions, figure out how you can do things better, but it's not clear yet what steps President Trump is going to make on this. If it's just a review, challenging your assumptions, figuring out what the intelligence community can do and how it can do it better, that's a good thing. But obviously there are a lot of folks in the intelligence community, I've talked to a number of them, I'm sure Paul and Karen have as well, who feel under siege right now. We need them not under siege. We need them to be proactively doing the important work that they do every day to make sure that we're safe from threats that we don't even know about. Those are two real differences.
So what we know, Paul Begala, is that some leading Democrats and Republicans in the Senate want more answers when it comes to Russia and the contacts between the Trump campaign and Russia, et cetera, and all of this and the conversation with Michael Flynn and the Russian ambassador. But it seems like he's pretty insulated, pretty protected in the House. He does not have a lot of leading Republican members of the House calling for this at all.
Right, and I understand that. No, Rand Paul in the Senate, a Republican from Kentucky, was candid enough to say Republicans shouldn't investigate Republicans, and kind of let the cat out of the bag. I think it was useful that at least someone was candid about them, at least Senator Paul, putting partisanship ahead of what's good for the country. But as Doug says, I would listen to Doug. If you pull back the lens, the president is at war with his own intelligence community. They are leaking, as Karen says, not because they are not patriots. They're leaking because they don't feel like there's any other way to get the truth out to the boss and to the American people. There's a cure for this. He could set up an independent commission like the 9/11 Commission, like the Iraq Study Group. As you pointed out, Poppy, they were very critical, or as Karen did, very critical of their own intelligence back 10 or 15 years ago when we made the mistakes about Iraq. Or you could have a bipartisan, independent congressional panel. You could have the Justice Department look into this with the Attorney General recusing himself because he played a critical role in the campaign. He can't investigate a campaign he was part of. They are doing none of that. In fact, instead, if this story about Mr. Feinberg coming in as some sort of police guy to criticize the intelligence agencies, that's a declaration of war. It's the last thing you want. I worked in the White House. The intelligence community, these people, they risk their lives. And I can't describe to you how much they focus on the president. They call him customer one or the customer. And they care deeply about what the president thinks. And when he insults them like this, and I think they're going to take this as a declaration of war, it's terrible for our national security.
Now, we should all... Go ahead, Karen.
And I would say, too, that recent presidents suggest that there is an opportunity for Donald Trump here to take some leadership on this. As the extent of the Iran-Contra scandal was becoming clear, President Reagan stepped in and called for an independent commission, the Tower Commission, to investigate that. It was President Bush who stepped forward to set up the 9/11 Commission. I spoke yesterday to Lee Hamilton, who was vice chairman of that commission. He thinks that Congress has completely lost its ability to do this kind of oversight, the kind of oversight that is really called for here.
And again, just to be clear, I think what you're talking about is a commission to investigate the reports of contacts between the campaign and Russian officials, to investigate the conversations that General Flynn had. If they want to investigate the leaks also, that can be part of it. But Doug High, I think what Paul and Karen are talking about there, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think you're going to see President Trump calling for a special prosecutor or an independent commission on this. So right now, it does rest in Congress to make the decision. And right now, you have at least House leadership, as Poppy was saying, and the chairs of the pertinent committee saying, we're not interested. We're not doing this. We're just focusing on the leaks. Do you see any chance that will change, Doug?
Yeah, I do, and I'll tell you one great example. It's my old boss, Senator Richard Burr from North Carolina. He's a Senate Intel chair. He said that this will be investigated. Democrats in the Senate have praised him for this work because they know how important he takes his role. Obviously, this needs to be investigated more, and Republicans are going to have a moment of truth over the coming week. They're going to be in town halls and events with constituents throughout the country. They're going to hear about this, and my guess is you'll hear some different language from some Republicans in about a week and a half from now than we're hearing today.
Guys, I want you to take a listen to CNN's multiple attempts to get the president to answer to our reporting. We haven't heard a peep from the White House about it in more than 24 hours. This is what happened yesterday.
President, are you going to answer any questions about your associate contacts with the Russians during the campaign?
Can you comment on the report that there was contact with their senior advisors and suspected Russian operatives during the presidential campaign, Mr. Trump? President Trump, no comment on that?
I mean, not even a no comment. And in addition to that, our Joe Johns tried to ask the same thing. The question to you, Paul Begala, though, as I travel and we travel across America and talk to voters, do you believe the president is working on the assumption while that White House gets their ducks in order, eventually they're going to need to answer this, that, it's only the media that cares about it. The voters don't care about this at all. And therefore, he thinks he can literally not even say no comment.
I think you're right, Poppy. I think that's probably his operating assumption, and that may hold for a while. Certainly, Trump voters, or maybe I'd say about half of Trump voters, are the way Mr. Trump described them. He could shoot a guy in Fifth Avenue and not lose any votes. Of course, actually, we all remember Dick Cheney did shoot a guy in the face and it didn't hurt him politically. So apparently it's right. There's some core cadre that he can never lose. But that's not enough to keep his Senate and House majorities in the Republicans' hands. As we get closer to the election, this damage will be, first, the most important thing, it hurts our national security. But when you get reporting like CNN has, that his campaign aides were in the words of the CNN report, constant contact with the Russians during a presidential campaign. I've run a presidential campaign. I wasn't in constant contact with my mama. You don't have time to call home, much less call the Kremlin. And this is, I think people understand that Russia is our adversary and that they are a threat. And if Trump's campaign, and maybe even Mr. Trump, were, metaphorically speaking, in bed with the Russians, that is going to bother voters.
Karen Tumulty, Doug High, Paul Begala, great to have you with us. Your debuts, all of you on our new show.
Yes,
really
thank
like
you guys.
Congratulations.
Congrats on the podcast.
Thank
Thank
so
you.
much.
Berman's the next guest.
The podcast, which she does alone with no co-anchor. Happening right now on Capitol